The story starts with Noah waking up in a noble's body one day, which sounds cool until he sees his status screen. It's basically the kind of report card that would make an Asian parent faint. He was born as the 13th prince of the imperial royal family, and the emperor seemed eager to lay eyes on his newest son. After being told that Noah's highest magical affinity was with water, the emperor casually decided to give him his fief Shelby Almeria, and it's a land where many of the water clan reside, as a first birthday gift. And the second he said that, something strange popped up next to Noah's pathetic E-rank water magic. Moments later, the emperor asks to see Noah's stats, and Noah starts sweating because with numbers like his, he's expecting to get yeeted straight into the palace trash can. But somehow, when the screen shows up, his water stat has skyrocketed from a pathetic E to a shiny double rank. Everything else was still bottom of the barrel F, but nobody cared anymore. A literal baby had just set the record for the highest water affinity they'd ever seen, so that alone was enough for the emperor to take a strong liking to him. Turns out the reason Noah's water magic skyrocketed was because of the fief gifted to him by his old man. Though oddly enough, on his private stat screen, it still showed as E+S. As for his other boosted stats, those apparently came from his maids, and he still has no clue why. But the more servants he's got, the stronger he gets. And as for his level, it's still stuck at 1, but it's got no cap, so it's only a matter of time before he breaks the system. For now though, he's stuck being a weakling with potential. During breakfast, one of his maids, Evelyn, walked in and let him know that his brothers were here. Not just any brothers either, but the 1st and 4th princes. Now in theory, sibling visits sound wholesome, but after 6 years in this world, Noah's already figured out these two are royal level assholes, so he knows he needs to tread carefully. He made his way to the lounge and met them with the usual formalities. Then, the 1st prince, Albert, suddenly announced that he had brought Noah a present. His servant carried it in, and the moment Noah laid eyes on the sword, his blood ran cold. That damn thing was cursed, and he could literally see tortured souls swirling around it. And of course, Albert knows damn well this thing is haunted, but he plays it off like it's just a nice gesture. And Noah couldn't just reject a gift from the damn crown prince, so he had no choice but to accept it, fully aware that this was going to come back to bite him hard. He grips the hilt and slowly raises it, while Albert casually explains that this is a water attribute magic sword, and over 120 knights have already died trying to wield it. That little fact sends a chill down Noah's spine, and he immediately loosens his grip, but the 4th prince, Henry, chimes in, reassuring him there's nothing to worry about. According to him, everyone who wasn't worthy of the blade dropped dead the second they touched it, so if Noah was going to die, it would have already happened. The only reason he's immune is probably because of his double S-ranked water affinity, and sure, that's kind of comforting, knowing he's not going to die, but Noah's still pissed that Albert basically used him as a lab rat just to test a theory. He can't say that out loud though, so he just keeps his cool and waits for Albert to take his leave so he can finally relax. Later that day, while walking through the corridor with his maid Zoe, Noah notices something's off. Her usual calm expression is gone, and she looks upset. He asks her what's wrong, but Zoe brushes it off, saying she's fine and doesn't want to trouble him with her problems, but Noah isn't buying it, and he firmly orders her to speak up, and she finally gives in. Zoe tells him she needs some time off to handle a family emergency. When he asks what kind, she explains that her hometown was hit by a flood, and her mother's farm got completely wiped out, so now her mom has no way to support herself. Zoe had been looking for ways to earn money quickly and was told her only real option would be working in the red light district. That's what she planned to do during her time off, but Noah cuts that thought off immediately, because there's no way in hell he's letting that happen. He tells her he'll give her mother a job instead, and it just so happens he's been looking to hire a rear gate closer, and since Zoe's vouching for her, she'll earn 10 reen a month. Zoe blinks in disbelief and asks if he's being serious, because 10 reen is way above the usual pay, and she's never even heard of that job before. That's because Noah just made it up on the spot, and it doesn't matter because it's his cash and he'll use it how he damn well pleases. He also tells her he's got a spare house sitting on the outskirts of town so they can stay there rent-free. Zoe's been loyal to him since day one, so there's no way he's letting her throw herself into a life like that over some stupid flood. But speaking of that disaster, there's still one more thing he needs to take care of. He calls his butler Dylan and gives a direct order. Start buying up as much flood-damaged land as he can. Both Dylan and Zoe are stunned by what they just heard, but Noah calmly explains his reasoning. In times like this, vultures always come crawling, scammers looking to take advantage of desperate people who have just lost everything, so he wants to secure the land before those crooks can sink their claws in. Dylan is left speechless, completely blown away that a 6-year-old could think so far ahead. Noah's way too sharp for his age, and while Dylan doesn't know it, Noah's past life taught him plenty about this kind of exploitation. Of course, he can't exactly say that, so he just moves on like it's nothing. Dylan's fully on board with helping him buy the land, but there's one huge problem, and it's the cost. And he estimates the whole thing's gonna run around 700,000 reen. Zoe practically gasps at the number, and Noah gets it. That's more than just pocket change. For context, the average adult in the capital earns around 120 reen a year, enough to support a family, own a house, and eat well. Noah's estate is definitely wealthier than the norm, but even then, he's only got around 500,000 reen on hand, so that leaves him short by 200,000. With barely any options, Noah decides to sell the land gifted to him, the fief territory the emperor gave him when he was born. Dylan immediately shoots that idea down because that land came straight from the imperial family, so selling it without permission isn't just frowned upon, it's a crime. Noah knows the risk, and he knows the consequences, but he's still willing to go through with it. If his father wants to punish him, then so be it, he'll deal with it later. The following morning, while Noah and his staff are getting ready to head out to the disaster zone, an unexpected visitor drops by, the 4th Prince Henry. Unlike Albert, who's a walking migraine, Henry is actually decent. Once you spend some time around him, you realize he genuinely cares. He came to check on Noah and to give him a heads up about that cursed sword. Apparently, the damn thing has a will of its own, so even if Noah's immune to the curse, the blade won't behave unless it recognizes him as its master. That info sticks with Noah, and he appreciates Henry for not being a complete tool. And soon after, Noah sets out for the village of Doso. When he arrives, it's worse than he imagined. Calling it flood damage is putting it lightly. The place looks like Poseidon and Kratos threw hands here and forgot to clean up, as entire sections of the village are shredded. And from just looking around, Noah can already tell most people probably lost all their official documents in the chaos. So he turns to Dylan and orders him to head straight to the local government office and gather as many record copies as possible to make the land purchases easier. While Dylan handles the paperwork, Noah decides to hit the streets himself to see firsthand how the survivors are doing. Zoe tries to stop him, reminding him that reconnaissance work isn't exactly a prince's job, but Noah doesn't care and tells her straight up that he's going, whether she likes it or not. She can either tag along or sit tight in the carriage till he gets back. Left with no choice, Zoe reluctantly follows, and as they survey the village, the situation turns out to be every bit as grim as it looked. The entire crop yield is gone, completely wiped out, which means no food, no income, and zero chance of making it through the year without help. Then a bell rings out through the village and all the townsfolk start gathering around what used to be the town square. Zoe figures it must be time for food distribution, as the Empire usually sends relief funds to disaster-hit areas like this. Noah's glad to see that at least some parts of the system are working the way they're supposed to, so he makes his way over to join the crowd for a meal, but the second he takes a bite, all that goodwill evaporates. The food is so bad, he's convinced even Indian street food would taste gourmet compared to this disaster. The broth is a watery, bitter mess, and he's pretty sure the veggies in it are half-rotten. One of the villagers overhears Noah's grumbling and, not knowing who he is, assumes he's just another victim of the flood. The man tells him the food always tastes this bad, and even when they complain, nothing ever changes. The cooks don't give a damn about hygiene or food safety. They just slap whatever they have into a pot and call it a day. Just then, a loud announcement cuts through the chatter, and inspection is underway. Noah asks Zoe what's going on, and she explains that the local government official Lord Geralt is here to check the food quality. Geralt strolls over to the pot of mystery stew, takes one look at it, and thinks it's absolute garbage. But since he's not the one eating it, he couldn't care less, and he casually tells the chef to whip up something actually edible for him back at the mansion. The chef nods, grinning, clearly in on the arrangement. But Noah's not about to let this slide, so he steps forward and calls Geralt out, asking if the reason the villagers are being served garbage is because he's siphoning off the food budget. Geralt, thinking Noah's just another poor nobody, doesn't even bother denying it. He openly admits to skimming the funds and laughs it off, because in his mind, there's nothing a powerless peasant can do about it. Listening to this arrogant bastard brag about stealing from flood victims makes Noah's blood boil. The fury hits him so hard that the cursed sword in the carriage begins to stir in response. Geralt finally snaps after hearing one too many words from this random brat. He draws his sword, fully intending to shut Noah up permanently. But before he can swing, the Leviathan sword bursts from its case and flies straight to Noah's side. Fueled by his unshakable will and sense of justice, the sword recognizes him as its rightful wielder. And now that it's chosen him, Noah doesn't hesitate. With a single clean strike, he cuts Geralt's head clean off for the crimes of stealing relief funds and threatening a royal prince. Not long after, Lord Rowan, Geralt's superior, arrives on the scene. Some guards rush up and try to convince him to arrest Noah for executing Geralt. But the moment Rowan lays eyes on him, he immediately recognizes who he's dealing with. He kneels without hesitation to show respect to the 13th prince. Noah tells him they need to have a serious conversation about what's been happening here, though the message is clear. Rowan is in hot water for letting Geralt run wild this long. Geralt's punishment is already done, but the rest of the rats who helped him steal are still around, and Noah expects Rowan to clean house. And for now, he gives one final order. Make sure the people get a proper meal. Later that day, after Noah wraps up the purchase of the entire village, word of what happened reaches Albert. He's genuinely surprised that Noah managed to wield the Leviathan sword without any backlash. But instead of being worried, he smirks. His little brother might have passed this test, but Albert clearly has more plans waiting for him down the line. At the same time, Noah is summoned for a meeting with his father. He walks in ready to be scolded for selling off imperial land just to buy a flooded village. But to his surprise, the emperor thanks him instead. If Noah hadn't stepped in, the suffering in that village would have been far worse. It's clear to him now that Noah's no ordinary prince, he's capable, so he asks him to keep using that strength for the good of the empire, and Noah cheerfully accepts the request without hesitation. The following morning, Noah makes his way to a quiet little diner tucked away on Raid Street, hoping to catch a glimpse of a street singer who's built a bit of a reputation around town. Stepping inside, he picks an empty seat and settles in without drawing attention, his eyes casually scanning the place. Just then, a girl with cotton candy pink hair steps up and starts singing for the diners. As her voice carries through the room, Noah instantly recognizes her as he's heard talk about her before, and her name is Alice. As he listens closely, he figures her voice isn't bad at all. But even without being a music expert, he can tell her technique is still pretty rough. She's got talent, sure, but there's a long road ahead. Still, one thing's crystal clear. She's giving it her all. Every note she hits, every line she sings, she pours her heart into it. She's not doing this just for fun. She's trying to grow, trying to survive on what little she has. Out of nowhere, the vibe in the diner shifts completely when three rough-looking men burst through the doors. They start shouting and instantly pull all attention their way. The moment they spot Alice, they begin yelling at her, demanding to know why she's wasting time singing instead of finding a real way to pay off her parents' debt. At their words, Alice shrinks back, clearly terrified as the men close in on her. Her voice shakes as she tells them she doesn't have the money yet, but she swears she's doing everything she can. She just doesn't have anything to give. The guys exchange dark smirks and start tossing around disgusting suggestions about how else a girl like her might pay up. Disgusted murmurs fill the room, but nobody steps forward. Everyone watches, frozen and powerless. Just when things are about to cross the line, Noah suddenly rises from his seat. He walks over, calm and composed, and reminds them that imperial law strictly forbids forcing a child to repay a parent's debt. The men snort and brush him off, assuming he's just some pampered rich kid who doesn't know how the world works. One of them then grabs Noah by the collar and goes to strike him, but it's a big mistake as Noah counters using the power of his Leviathan sword, releasing a surge of pressure that shocks the entire room. The men instantly realize they've messed with the wrong person, so panic overtakes them, and the three thugs bolt out of the diner without a second thought, too scared to push their luck any further. With the danger gone, Noah turns back to Alice, his voice gentle this time. He asks her how much she needs to make it through the month, and she hesitates before explaining that most of what she earns goes toward her mother's medical care. After hearing everything, Noah calmly tells Alice that from now on, he'll be giving her 25 reen every month so she can focus entirely on her singing without worrying about money. He also promises to raise the amount as her skills improve, encouraging her to keep chasing her dream without fear holding her back. Deeply moved, Alice thanks him with genuine emotion, telling him how much his kindness means to her. She promises she won't let him down and swears to work hard and keep growing as a singer. Later, Noah heads back home, only to find the same three thugs from earlier kneeling at the palace gates. Heads bowed, they're practically groveling, desperate to apologize for what happened. One glance is all it takes for Noah to realize what's going on. They've clearly figured out who he really is, but instead of wasting time with them, Noah calmly turns to the maids and tells them to send the men away, adding that the prince isn't someone they can just meet whenever it suits them. A few moments later, Noah's older brother Henry shows up and immediately agrees with how Noah handled it. He says refusing to meet them was absolutely the right call because letting people like that come face to face with royalty would only cheapen the dignity of the crown and undermine the authority of the royal family. Noah then invites Henry inside and explains that his decision wasn't just about protecting royal pride. He tells him everything that went down at the diner and admits that if he had spoken to the men personally, they might have assumed he was angry and start avoiding him. And if that fear keeps them away from Alice, then that's exactly the outcome he wants. Henry listens carefully and finds himself genuinely impressed. For someone so young, Noah was already thinking several steps ahead. He even admits that most of their brothers, despite being around Noah's age, wouldn't have had that kind of foresight, and the realization makes Henry even more proud. Henry then brings up the Leviathan sword and asks if the rumors are true that Noah has actually mastered it. Noah confirms it's true and says he was only able to do it thanks to the advice Henry gave him earlier. And to demonstrate it, he casually summons the Leviathan sword right in front of him, making it appear as if it materialized out of nowhere. Henry stares in disbelief because he didn't even know the Leviathan sword could do something like that. Noah explains that the blade didn't actually appear from thin air. It had been hidden beneath his sleeve the whole time, compact and dormant until it expanded at his command. The sword itself had a will, and it was the one that taught him how to use the ability. Henry admits he had no idea that was even possible and praises Noah for discovering it on his own. Afterward, outside the palace walls, the same three men from earlier are still lingering around, clearly waiting for another chance to confront Noah. The moment one of them spots him approaching, he suddenly lunges forward to attack. But Noah doesn't even flinch, and with a calm expression, he releases just a sliver of the Leviathan sword's power. The shift in pressure is instant, and the man recoils in pure terror and immediately starts begging for forgiveness. Watching the entire scene unfold, Henry turns to Noah puzzled and asks what he just did, and Noah casually replies that he simply used a bit of the sword's aura to intimidate them. That same evening, Noah receives an invitation to attend a royal ball, and as he steps into the grand hall, all eyes turn to him, and the moment he enters, the room erupts into applause. Standing beside him, a nobleman named Radok notices the object strapped to Noah's waist and points it out. Noah confirms it's exactly what it looks like, the Leviathan sword, personally gifted to him by the crown prince. The moment those words leave his mouth, the entire hall falls into stunned silence, followed by a collective gasp. Everyone there recognizes the Leviathan as one of the kingdom's greatest relics, a weapon so powerful that even seasoned warriors fear it due to how uncontrollable it's rumored to be. One skeptical guest speaks up, suggesting the sword must be a fake, maybe just a ceremonial replica. Without saying a word, Noah releases a faint ripple of its power into the air. The effect is immediate, and a heavy pressure crashes down on the room, forcing several guests to shrink back in fear. The moment Noah pulls the energy back in, the room falls into a stunned silence once again, and no one questions it after that. It's clear the weapon is real, and even more shocking, Noah has complete control over it. For the rest of the night, nobles begin lining up one after another, each hoping to make a good impression. They greet him with careful words and respectful gestures, each one calling it an honor just to stand in his presence. Noah listens to every introduction with composed grace, replying politely to each guest. Eventually, the next pair in line steps forward, Byron Allen, head of the powerful Allen Company, and his daughter Cindy. Noah studies them closely as they approach, and after watching for just a moment, he picks up on something unusual. He realizes right away that Cindy isn't Byron's biological daughter. She's adopted. More than that, it becomes obvious to him that Cindy was once a slave. The clue lies in her eyes. That careful, guarded look, always scanning the room, quietly bracing herself. It's a look Noah knows well, the look of someone who's lived in chains and never stopped watching their backs. Byron is left speechless that Noah managed to figure all that out just by looking at her. Stunned, he drops to one knee and admits everything. He explains that Cindy was originally a slave he purchased, but after seeing how sharp and quick-witted she was, he made the choice to adopt her as his daughter. Hearing that puts a genuine smile on Noah's face. He always enjoyed stories where someone's life took a turn for the better. Moved, Noah invites both Byron and Cindy to visit his estate sometime soon, saying he'd love to hear more about Cindy's past in detail. Byron bows respectfully and agrees, saying it would be his honor. After exchanging farewells, the two politely excuse themselves from the party. The following day, Noah's strolling casually through town when he unexpectedly bumps into his brother Oscar, who also happens to be the kingdom's 8th prince. After a bit of light conversation, Oscar suggests they go on a treasure hunt together, saying he's got nothing else planned for the day. Noah agrees, and the two set off toward a place called Cobalt Street. Though Noah's never been there before, he's heard plenty about it. Supposedly, it's packed with rare antiques from all over the empire. Oscar, however, points out that the place is just as infamous for being swarmed with fakes. Spotting a genuine item among the junk is seen as a basic test of skill for any proper noble. They end up spending hours browsing through shops and stands, but nothing really stands out. Eventually, Oscar sighs and suggests they give up and head home. Just then, Noah's eyes land on an old book tucked away in a dusty corner. Something about it pulls him in, so he decides to buy it. Oscar leans in for a closer look and suddenly freezes. His eyes widen as he realizes what Noah's holding: the grimoire of Andrea, the legendary mage. Oscar is convinced it's authentic, and if so, depending on the contents, the book could easily be worth 1,000 rein. He stares at Noah in disbelief and asks how he knew the book was the real deal. But truth be told, Noah had no clue. The only reason he bought it was because the second his fingers touched the cover, he got a plus added to his win stat, and that odd reaction was enough to make him think the book was worth something. Out of nowhere, a wild idea hits Noah, so he pulls out the Leviathan sword and carefully channels a bit of its energy straight into the grimoire. And within seconds, the book jolts violently, slips out of his hands, crashes to the ground, and flips open by itself. One of the spell pages glows ominously, and something dark and ancient is triggered. Before they know it, the forbidden tome unleashes the sealed soul of the legendary sorcerer right in front of them. Oscar's eyes go wide with horror. He instantly realizes how serious this is and yells for Noah to get the hell out of there. But instead of running, Noah plants his feet, lifts the Leviathan, and without flinching, slashes straight through the incoming spirit with a single brutal swing. The blow cleaves through the sorcerer's soul, erasing it completely in one strike. As the danger fades, Noah glances at his status window and sees something new. His wind skill just jumped to SS rank. The sudden upgrade catches him off guard, but he doesn't sit on it. He quickly checks on Oscar, who's still frozen in disbelief. The prince can't wrap his head around what just happened. One moment they were standing in front of a book, and the next, Noah had wiped out a legendary soul like it was nothing. He keeps asking himself how Noah managed to grow this powerful so fast and how he knew exactly what to do. Before the dust even settles, a man steps forward and kneels respectfully before them. He introduces himself as Alan, the owner of a nearby antique shop. After witnessing what Noah just pulled off, Alan says he feels it's only right to show him something he's been holding on to for years, something he believes might actually be a real treasure, and he politely asks them to come with him. Once inside the shop, Alan pulls out an odd-looking ring and sets it down carefully. He explains that this ring is said to only reveal its true nature when its destined owner shows up. Dozens have tried to activate it, but not once has it responded. Noah raises an eyebrow, thinking it's probably just another dud, but Alan immediately insists otherwise. He says the ring refuses to be sold, and every time he tries to part with it, it mysteriously ends up back in his store, sitting quietly among the other items. Intrigued, Noah slips the ring onto his finger, and the moment he does, a voice he's never heard before echoes inside his mind. It tells him the ring is a triple S rank rarity, and that it now recognizes him as its rightful master. As soon as the words fade, the ring bursts into a radiant glow and begins shifting. Light wraps around Noah's body like living threads, forging itself into an elegant, high-tier suit of armor right before their eyes. Upon witnessing the moment, both Oscar and Alan instantly realize that Noah is the rightful bearer of the ring. Noah turns to Alan, stating that he'll be taking it and will have the money delivered later. But before Alan can even open his mouth, Oscar steps in and tells Noah to forget the payment altogether. He'll cover the cost himself and insists Noah treat it as a personal gift. With nothing more to say, Noah accepts the ring. Soon after, Oscar drops him off and says his goodbyes. But just as Noah is about to walk through the door, that same rough-looking guy from the diner suddenly comes charging at him with a sword. Before the blade even comes close, the ring picks up on the killer's intent and flares to life, unleashing a shield that blocks the strike completely. The carriage driver doesn't hesitate for a second and slams the attacker down, locking him to the ground. Oscar sees the whole thing unfold and is stunned, not just by the ring's quick reaction, but by how naturally Noah handled it. The way the shield activated without hesitation makes it clear Noah's already sensing with its power. That night, Noah heads back to the diner to watch Alice perform. As she's singing, two wasted men suddenly storm the stage, shoving and yelling over her. In a flash, Noah appears between them and steps in. With one swing of the Leviathan sword, he sends both idiots flying through the doors, their pants halfway gone as they scramble off in shame. After things settle, Noah walks up to the owner and tells him not to let trash like that back inside. The owner just gives a tired sigh and says sadly that drunks like them are what keep the place alive. Noah gets it, and without a second thought offers to buy the whole diner for 1,000 rein. The owner freezes in disbelief and nods in gratitude, overwhelmed. Alice walks up soon after, her voice low and unsure, telling Noah she has no idea how to repay him for everything he's done, but he gently tells her she doesn't owe him a thing. All he wants is for her to keep singing, to chase her dream and pour her heart into it. Her eyes well up, and with a warm, heartfelt smile, she nods. Noah then heads back to his seat and spends the rest of the night in peace, soaking in the soft glow of her voice as it fills the room. As the day begins, Noah is suddenly told that dead Marley, the general of Wholejoy, has come to pay him a visit. Wholejoy happens to be one of the most promising regions under Noah's control, so he doesn't hesitate to accept the visit and instructs the maids to let him in. Marley enters and greets him formally in the meeting room, but Noah quickly waves off the stiff manners and tells him to sit down. The two first met about a year and a half ago, right after Marley took on the role of Wholejoy's general. That in mind, Noah jumps straight to the obvious and asks how things have been. He remembers Marley was handed an imperial directive to handle flood prevention in the area, but judging by the guy's face, it's pretty damn clear things aren't going well. Wholejoy is a rich agricultural zone that runs alongside a curving river, great for crops, but total pain when it floods, which it does from time to time. That's exactly why the Emperor ordered financial support for disaster prevention. But Marley admits he hasn't been able to get anything off the ground, and the biggest roadblock is the finance minister, who keeps coming up with lame excuses to delay releasing the funds. The second Noah hears that, his mood darkens. It reeks of corruption and mishandling of public funds, and he's not about to let that slide. Without missing a beat, he tells Marley to tag along because they're going to have a little face-to-face with the minister himself. A short while later, Noah shows up for lunch with the finance minister, and the guy turns out to be every bit as bloated and slimy as Noah imagined. The man tries buttering him up with some empty compliments, but Noah shuts it down fast and asks why the hell he hasn't handed over the money Marley needs to fix Wholejoy's flooding issue. The minister stays calm and claims he's got a valid reason, but before he can even spit it out, Noah cuts him off and warns him not to think he can talk down to him just because he looks young. Last he checked, treating a royal with disrespect was still punishable by death. That gets the minister squirming a bit. So he hurries to explain that after last year's flood, the Emperor was kind enough to give Wholejoy a tax break, so he figured they could just use the money they saved to handle this year's flood situation. Noah stares at him like he's gone insane. That might just be the dumbest excuse he's heard in all 6 years of living in this world. He flat out asks the man if he thinks he's talking to an idiot. The tax exemption was clearly given because Wholejoy couldn't afford to pay anything in the first place, so to act like they've got extra funds lying around now is just a slap in the face to Noah's intelligence. The minister instantly realizes he's knee-deep in trouble, so he scrambles to come up with another excuse. Then he blurts out that the reason he can't release the flood funds is because he needs them for the Emperor. He clearly thinks dropping the Emperor's name will shut Noah up for good, and his excuse is that the Emperor's getting old and wants to build a royal villa for him to relax in. That's the final straw for Noah, so he stares the man down and tells him he's just committed a serious crime. Not only did he dare to call the Emperor an old man, but he also used the Emperor's name to justify embezzlement, and worst of all, his excuse boiled down to, sure, that territory's underwater, but we've got to build a fancy house. It's the dumbest thing Noah's ever heard. The minister instantly drops to his knees and starts begging for forgiveness, knowing full well he screwed up beyond saving. But Noah tells him flat out that if he doesn't want the Emperor to hear every word of this disaster, he'd better cough up the money. The man takes off in a panic, desperate to fix his mistake before it costs him his head. With that mess taken care of, Marley finally breathes a sigh of relief and thanks Noah for stepping in. He also apologizes for dragging him into the middle of such a headache, but admits there was no way he could have dealt with the finance minister on his own. As Noah gets ready to head back, a messenger suddenly rushes in with news. The Emperor has requested a meeting with him. Noah is startled because it's not often his father calls him out of the blue like this, so whatever it is, it must be serious. So without wasting a second, he makes his way to the Imperial Palace. Once he arrives, Noah greets his father, but the Emperor tells him there's no need for all the formality. First things first, he congratulates Noah on how well he handled the finance minister. Noah's a little stunned that the Emperor already knows about something that happened barely moments ago, but then he's reminded, knowledge is power, and when you're the Emperor, your information network is second to none. Noah humbly accepts the praise but says he only did what he believed was right. Even so, the Emperor is clearly impressed. He tells Noah it's no small thing for a 6-year-old to see through deception so easily. And to top it off, he also heard about how Noah mastered the power of Leviathan in such a short time, which is especially impressive given how dangerously dark that sword's magic really is. Noah knows exactly how dangerous Leviathan really is because if he hadn't intervened back at the party, that sword would have wiped out every last person there without hesitation. But even with all that insane power, Noah still hasn't properly learned how to wield a blade. That's why the Emperor decided to assign him a personal instructor. Not just anyone either, this is Damien Noble, the Empire's undefeated champion and the greatest swordsman alive. The Emperor wants Noah to absorb everything he can from him, and Noah agrees to the arrangement. But before any formal training begins, Damien suggests they have a little friendly duel first. The Emperor raises an eyebrow, thinking that's a bit unfair since Noah's never been trained in sword combat, but Damien reassures him that it's just a light test to gauge Noah's raw potential. Eventually, the Emperor gives the go-ahead, so Damien lifts his sword and tells Noah to attack however he likes. Without hesitation, Noah grabs Leviathan and charges straight in. As the fight begins, Noah suddenly feels the instincts and battle experience of Leviathan's previous wielder flooding into him, and his swordsmanship gets sharper by the second. Blow after blow, he holds his own, and soon he and Damien lock blades in a clash of raw force. Just when Damien thinks he's gained the upper hand, Noah flicks his sword upward with perfect precision, disarming the Empire's greatest warrior on the spot. Both Damien and the Emperor are left stunned, as Noah has already reached the level of a swordmaster, so there's simply nothing left for anyone to teach him. The Emperor is left speechless, watching his 6-year-old son take down a legend in real combat. Still, he can't help but feel a wave of pride. As a reward for such an insane achievement, he offers Noah the role of head judge for this year's Knight Selection exam, and Noah's genuinely honored to take on the responsibility. The Knight Selection is a massive annual tournament where warriors from across the world gather to prove their strength. Inside the Empire, military power is everything. The top fighters from regional qualifiers all meet in the capital for a final showdown, and whoever wins earns the title of Knight. Once they're officially knighted, their first mission is to serve directly under the head judge. And since Noah's power increases whenever he gains a skilled subordinate, he's more than eager to see how it all plays out. The tournament is usually structured as either a round-robin or single elimination, but Noah's already got a different idea for how things should go this year. He asks the Emperor for permission to scrap the regional qualifiers altogether and host the entire tournament in the capital because he wants to witness every battle with his own eyes, and he refuses to let any promising candidates get tossed aside just because he's not there to stop it. The Emperor grants full permission, telling him to run it however he sees fit. And with that, Noah gets straight to work putting his new plan into action. Back at his place, Noah casually asks Zoe if her home village ever sends anyone to compete in the Knight Selection exam. She says they do, but usually just one person, and that's only so the village can hope someone makes a name for them. Noah lets her know that he's decided to eliminate the regional preliminaries altogether, which means her village can send as many people as they like. Zoe's glad to hear it, but says there's still a huge problem. The reason they only send one candidate isn't just about odds, it's money. They simply can't afford the cost of travel and staying in the capital for the duration of the exam. The entire village has to scrape together every coin just to send that one person, so the idea of sending more just isn't realistic. But Noah doesn't like the idea of potential talent being wasted because of money, so he decides right then that he's going to personally cover travel and lodging for all candidates this year. It's a generous move, no doubt, but also an expensive one. Housing that many people in the capital would normally be insanely expensive, and there's no way they can just throw that kind of money around. But Noah already has a plan. He says he'll purchase all the vacant buildings in the area and use them to house the candidates. And if that still doesn't cut it, he'll build a hostel from scratch. That way, whatever they spend won't go to waste after the tournament's done. As for food, he plans to get in touch with all his merchant contacts and secure the best deal possible. Eventually, Noah brings Byron in and asks him for a cost estimate on the whole operation. But when Byron gives him a number, Noah immediately gets stunned because the price is way too low. There's no shot Byron would make any profit like that. But Byron brushes it off, saying it's fine, he just wants to support the prince. But Noah doesn't buy that shit because he knows damn well that merchants never give anything away unless there's something in it for them. So he calls Byron out and asks him to cut the act and just say what he wants in return. Byron is honestly impressed that a kid Noah's age understands how business really works. Since the mask is off now, he admits he was hoping Noah could pull a few strings during the next castle staff selection, just enough to get one of Byron's people hired. That way, if something important ever goes down within the castle walls, Byron would be among the first to know. Noah agrees to the deal. And to show he's serious, Byron swears full loyalty to Noah and Noah alone out of everyone in the royal family. Adding Byron as a subordinate gives Noah a solid stat boost. But just as he's checking his stat window, he notices something weird. His water magic stat just dropped by 1 rank. Most of that stat comes from the land he governs, which means something bad must just happen in Almeria. Noah then heads straight to his father to report that something's going on in Almeria. The Emperor listens carefully and believes him, but still asks how Noah could possibly know such a thing. Noah obviously can't reveal the existence of his stat screen, so he keeps things vague and says he's just been picking up on signs for a while now. That answer seems to satisfy the Emperor, who shifts gears and begins explaining the situation. Turns out there's a rebellion brewing in the region. He asks Noah if he'd like to personally handle the matter, but after thinking it through, Noah declines. Most nobles would jump at the chance to earn glory through battle, but he tells his father that Henry is the better choice, since he's got far more experience dealing with this kind of mess. Later that evening, Noah and Henry ride together in a carriage, and Henry asks if he's really okay giving up such an opportunity. In a country like theirs, Noah could have boosted his status big time by securing a major battlefield victory, but Noah tells him the truth. He doesn't believe he's strong enough yet to lead troops into combat, and even if he somehow survived, he'd likely lose good soldiers in the process, and that's not something he's willing to risk just to chase a title. All of a sudden, Leviathan sends a warning of hostile intent nearby, so Noah immediately tells the driver to stop the carriage. He's certain it's a group of rebels trying to assassinate him, and since he's the target, he leaps out and sprints away from Henry, putting as much distance between them as he can. Right after that, 4 massive jets of water erupt from the ground, aiming to converge on him, but Noah already has his shield up and blocks the attack without a scratch. The rebels then rush in to finish the job, but they're completely out of their depth. Noah takes them down one by one in mere seconds, his technique too polished, his speed too fast. Henry watches the whole thing unfold and is honestly stunned by how easily Noah handled them. The only downside is that they didn't manage to interrogate anyone. They could have gotten useful intel if they'd kept one alive. That's when Noah casually mentions they're not dead. He only knocked them out, so Henry is free to interrogate them to his heart's content. Not long after that, Noah learns that the rebel forces in Almeria are made up mostly of cavalry. But there's a catch. Almeria doesn't have a single horse farm, which means the rebels must be getting their horses and supplies from neighboring regions. And that little piece of intel sparks an idea. Noah summons Byron and gives him a very specific order. Buy out every last bit of horse feed from the territories surrounding Almeria. Once the rebels start running out of supplies for their mounts, their mobility vanishes, and that'll make it a hell of a lot easier for Henry to finish the job and crush the rebellion for good. Not long after, the Emperor summons Noah to give him an update. He says his men interrogated the assassins and actually managed to get something out of them. Apparently, their goal wasn't to kill Noah. They were trying to kidnap him and use him as leverage. But Noah isn't buying it. he flat out tells his father that any hitman who cracks this fast is probably just feeding them bullshit. The Emperor, amused and a little proud, notes how sharp Noah is for his age. Still, he reassures him that they've got ways of telling when someone's lying. Noah doesn't care to ask what kind of methods those are, but he's not exactly into torture, so he just lets it slide. Then the Emperor switches gears, giving Noah credit for acting fast and crushing the rebel threat before things got out of hand. He's especially impressed that Noah had the foresight to target the enemy's horses. That catches Noah off guard because he only told Alan to start buying horse feed a few minutes ago, and somehow his dad already knows about it. But the Emperor keeps going, saying that while starvation is a common strategy, one even the Crown Prince Albert wanted to use to humiliate the rebels, but Noah went a step further. Instead of just starving the men, he cut their power by focusing on their horses, and what's even better, he used his own allowance to fund the move. With a proud smile, the Emperor pats him on the shoulder, telling him he's not just smart, he's got the guts to act fast when it matters, and that kind of decisiveness isn't common. Noah feels a weird sense of pride bubbling up inside him, maybe a little too much pride, like he's enjoying this praise way more than he should, but the Emperor doesn't stop there. As a reward for his sharp thinking, he gives Noah the right to add a sword to his personal crest. That might not sound like much, but in a warrior kingdom like theirs, it's a huge deal. No one's allowed to touch the sword emblem without imperial approval, and doing it without permission could mean death. Even just getting a flag added to your crest is rare, so yeah, this is a massive honor. And Noah's trying hard not to smile like a kid who just got a whole candy store. Later that day, Alan drops by, so Noah walks over and greets Alan, teasing him for showing up early. Alan just nods, saying he's already familiar with every type of horse feed sold in the market, plus the transport routes, so cornering the supply won't be hard. Still, he's not too relaxed about it, so he warns Noah that Carfin the rebel leader is a dangerous bastard who'll do anything to get what he wants. While Noah is minding his business, a maid rushes in to inform him that there's a wounded man outside their gate. Curious, he goes to check it out and finds a bloodied knight barely holding himself up. The man drops to one knee and reports that a rebellion has broken out in Almeria. He adds that his commanding officer is part of the uprising, but he refused to join and came here instead to warn the prince. Alan, standing nearby, scoffs and mutters that the guy nearly got himself killed for no reason because they already knew about the rebellion. But Noah doesn't brush the knight off. He thanks him for coming and instructs the maid to treat his wounds. Just as he's turning to leave, he stops, thinks for a second, and then tells her to reward the knight with 1,000 reen. Alan follows after him, clearly annoyed, asking why the hell he's throwing money away for intel they already had. Noah calmly replies that the reward isn't for the information, it's for loyalty and guts. Later, Zoe barges into Noah's office looking like she's seen a ghost, and she drops to her knees before even saying a word. Noah gets concerned and asks her what's going on, but she doesn't answer at first. She just pulls out a pouch with 500 reen and then hands him a small glass vial. She explains that some shady stranger offered her both as payment to drug Noah and hand him over. That's when it hits him. The rebels are getting real desperate if they're trying to snatch him like this. He stares at the bottle for a moment, then asks her why she brought it to him instead of going through with it. That's when she breaks down in tears. She says the men threatened to kill her if she failed, but no matter what, she could never bring herself to betray him. Without saying a word, Noah walks to his desk, grabs a pen, and writes her a check for 5,000 reen. He tells her it's for not selling her loyalty cheap. Zoe stares at the amount, her brain short-circuiting. She stammers that she can't accept something this big, but he just tells her to quit arguing and take the damn reward. As she keeps crying and thanking him, he quietly says there's something else she needs to do. He tells her he's going to drink the sleeping drug, and once he's out cold, she's going to deliver him to the bastards who made the offer. Then she's to run, as fast as she can, before they get the chance to shut her up for good. Zoe's whole body shakes just thinking about it, but Noah's not asking for permission. His decision is final, and he's going to meet the rebels face to face. A few hours later, he wakes up dumped in the middle of nowhere and catches the rebels whispering about how killing him is their last option, since they're under strict orders from Carfin to keep him alive. Noah lets the sedative wear off completely before evaluating the scene. His wrists and ankles are tightly bound, but these clowns clearly never played a real game of search and destroy because they missed the damn Leviathan hidden snug in his ear. He pulls it out, returns it to full size, and summons a water blade through his enchanted ring to slice the ropes clean. With that out of the way, he taps into the sword's memory to review what went down. He watches himself slumped unconscious in his office while Zoe bolts out the door and the rebels swoop in around him. They didn't even bother chasing her, as their orders were extract Noah fast, then he was hauled into a wide-open carriage and driven off. Now, fully caught up, Noah shifts his focus to the rebels chilling around a campfire. Their leader starts yelling about whoever screwed up the rope job, right before Noah drops in with Leviathan ready. The bandits laugh, thinking he's just some pampered noble without his big brother this time. One charges in to smack him down and drag him back, but the fool doesn't even get a step in before Noah flashes forward and slices clean through every artery in his neck. The man drops dead on the spot, and now the rest start to panic. Noah mutters that he was hoping to interrogate someone, but it's useless when a whole squad's made up of morons who still think Henry took out the assassins. The rebels raise their weapons, but Noah quickly wipes them out without breaking a sweat. Then he notices Zoe approaching with a squad of knights and asks what the hell she's doing here. She says she got worried and came to rescue him, but turns out she didn't need to lift a finger. Noah motions for the knight captain to step forward and take the rebels into custody. As they start rounding them up, one of the rebels drops a strange dagger and a knight moves in to grab it, but Noah immediately yells at him to stop. Everyone freezes as Noah steps toward the blade, sensing a heavy wave of cursed energy radiating from it, something only he can pick up thanks to his link with Leviathan. He vaguely recalls overhearing the rebels mention a cursed dagger they were saving as a last resort. As he stands before it, he feels the deep malice of whoever laid the curse, and for just a second, he catches a glimpse of the bastard's face. Noah instantly realizes that the face he saw belongs to the leader of the rebels and decides to handle it himself. He speaks to Leviathan, asking if it can help him pull this off, since something like this should be ridiculously easy for a legendary water element sword. Leviathan answers by glowing, and Noah channels its cursed energy to fire a stream of corrupted water straight into the sky. The cursed torrent shoots far above the clouds and across half the empire, eventually reaching Karfun and striking him directly. The following morning, the Emperor summons Noah once more and kneels down at his height, patting his shoulders in praise for the unbelievable feat he just pulled off. Reports say the rebel leader was found dead with a clean hole drilled straight through the center of his forehead, clearly made by a jet of water, and the Emperor knows there is no one else who could have done that except Noah. Noah confirms it, explaining that he used the hatred embedded in the cursed dagger to lock onto the rebel leader, then landed a no-scope headshot from hundreds of miles away. With their leader gone, crushing the remaining rebels becomes an easy job for Henry, and before long, everyone involved is captured. Later, a massive assembly is then called to decide their punishment, and the Emperor orders the culprits to be drawn and quartered. The crowd is pleased with the sentence, but Noah steps forward and respectfully kneels before the Emperor, telling him that he should not do that. The entire hall freezes at his words, especially the Emperor, who asks what he is talking about. Noah explains that punishment must follow the law, and there is no provision for quartering anyone. According to the law, the rebel leaders are to be split in half, while the rest are sent to forced labor camps, and Noah insists that this is how it should be handled. The Emperor asks how he could possibly refuse the most brutal death for those who dared rebel in his own territory. Noah calmly replies that if the Emperor breaks the law, it would damage his reputation and undermine the people's trust. Everyone is left speechless by that answer, but the Emperor ultimately agrees with Noah. He says they will follow the law, then adds that the criminals should still receive the harshest punishment the law allows without any compassion. Noah has no objections, so the Emperor turns to the Prime Minister and orders him to see that everything is carried out to the letter of the law. The entire court bursts into applause, showering Noah with praise for daring to correct the Emperor so boldly, and for doing it with logic and respect. So they start hailing him as a future legend. Even the Emperor can't hide how proud he is, clearly moved by the fact that Noah had the guts to stand up to him for the right reasons. After thinking it over for a moment, he decides to reward Noah with a title. He says that while any of his children might challenge him, it's rare to see someone do it not out of pride, but out of principle. That's why he grants Noah the title of the Wise Prince, and the change immediately updates in Noah's status window. The Emperor even jokes that if Noah had been born 10 years earlier, things might have turned out differently. He doesn't outright say Noah would have been a contender for the throne, but the implication hangs thick in the air. The court erupts into cheers after that comment, and the Emperor shifts the topic by asking Noah how preparations are going for the upcoming Knight Selection exam. Noah politely requests permission to explain his plans later, and the Emperor agrees to hear them after court is adjourned. Later, they head to the palace gardens near a fountain. Noah relaxes with a cup of tea while 4 servants surround him holding buckets of water, and at his signal, they all try to splash him at once, but he calmly activates the shield in his ring, stopping every drop from touching him. The Emperor raises an eyebrow, not fully grasping what he just saw, so Noah explains during the selection exam, he's going to ask each participant to attack him the same way, and he'll judge their skills based on how close they get to hitting him. The Emperor is clearly impressed with the unorthodox approach, though he expresses concern that it could be dangerous. Noah, confident as ever, says he'll personally handle anyone strong enough to break through, and once again, the Emperor is blown away by his boldness and innovation. Later that night, the Emperor sits in the throne room alongside the Prime Minister, who questions whether it was wise to make that public remark about Noah being born too late. The Emperor simply laughs, saying he meant every word. Noah is something else entirely. Still, there's a flicker of unease in his eyes as he mentions Leviathan. Its true power is still sealed, and that's no small thing. He quietly gives an order to bring out a special treasure, murmuring that Leviathan's full strength is never meant to be unleashed, but maybe Noah is the one who can handle it. The night of the selection exam finally arrives, drawing in crowds from even the farthest corners of the empire. Commoners, nobles, and onlookers alike flood the capital to witness the next generation of knights prove their worth. But this year's turnout is massive for one reason. Word had gotten out that the legendary Wise Prince Noah would be one of the judges. With that kind of name attached, everyone wanted a front row seat. Noah, unfazed by the excitement, sits calmly on stage, sipping tea like it's just another day. He's already decided to use his enchanted defense ring to gauge the candidates, and right on cue, one of them boldly charges at him without warning. The ring flares to life, casting a barrier that absorbs the hit with ease. The attacker swings again and again, trying to break through with sheer force, but the shield doesn't budge an inch, causing him to sword break. The crowd watches in awe, and whispers ripple through the stands that this is the power of the Wise Prince. From his private balcony above, the Emperor watches with amusement, noting that this year's test is already shaping up to be far more exciting than the last. Still, flash and spectacle aside, the point of the exam is to find true knights, and he's curious who Noah will end up picking. By the time the sun begins to set, another candidate is throwing everything he has at Noah, hurling flames with all the magic he's got left. Noah casually conjures a barrier, letting the fire dance harmlessly in front of him. The candidate drops to his knees, completely drained, and realizes he's just not good enough. Noah agrees silently that none of the participants so far have stood out, and he's starting to lose hope for a surprise. Then comes the final candidate of the day, and Noah barely pays her any mind until she steps up. A blonde girl, calm and focused, strikes with her blade. The defense shield kicks in as usual, but to everyone's shock, she doesn't back down. With one clean, powerful push, she shatters the shield and actually manages to cut him. It's not deep, but the fact that she landed a blow leaves the crowd stunned and Noah wide-eyed. The guards instantly rush in and restrain her, but Noah tells them to stand down. Instead, he asks for her name, and she answers Shirley Grants. Without a moment's pause, Noah turns to the crowd and declares that Shirley has passed the exam. The announcement hits like a thunderclap because she's the only one all day to pass. The guards are stunned, struggling to understand why Noah would accept someone who just wounded him, but that only makes the spectators admire him even more. They begin shouting his name in praise, calling him a noble and generous ruler. Noah leads Shirley into his estate, and as she drops to one knee before him, her mind races with dread over what sort of penalty might await her for injuring him during the test. Hurting royalty, even by mistake, is no small thing. But Noah quickly puts her mind at ease, telling her not to be ridiculous. It was obviously unintentional. He gives a faint smile, then unexpectedly tells her to strike him with that same move again. Shirley hesitates for a second but obeys. She stands up and thrusts her blade at him. Noah raises his shield, and this time it holds firm. He tells her this is what he could have done if he had genuinely intended to block her blow the first time. He let it hit him on purpose to see if she'd obey her orders without hesitation or fear. A knight's role is to carry out commands, and he has no use for one who's too scared to follow through. The fact that she didn't hold back, not once but twice, even after injuring him, proves she has the grit and loyalty needed to serve as a real knight. Shirley is caught off guard, realizing Noah's got far more backbone than she expected for someone his age. His cool, composed confidence tells her everything. He's got what it takes to lead. Moved by respect, she kneels again and swears loyalty to him, promising to serve him faithfully for as long as she's a knight, and Noah gives a satisfied nod. When he glances at his stats, he notices that recruiting Shirley has given him a noticeable power boost, another win as a leader. Right then, Zoe steps in to let him know that the doctor, someone named Croy, has arrived. Croy immediately gets to work inspecting Noah's injury, and after a careful check, he confirms that Shirley's strike didn't hit anything major, so no organs or veins were damaged. Meanwhile, Shirley quietly observes the doctor, impressed by his skill and composure. It surprises her, since back in her village, no one even comes close to being a real doctor. Noticing the look in her eyes, Noah asks her what's on her mind. Shirley explains that where she's from, the village is too poor to have real doctors or any proper medical training. When people fall ill, they usually rely on the village elder to pray or perform some kind of spiritual ritual. Hearing that, Noah thinks for a moment and comes up with a simple solution: apprenticeships. He tells Shirley to pick out the brightest and most promising folks from her village, then turns to Croy and asks if he'd be willing to take them under his wing. Croy agrees without a second thought. Noah then tells Shirley not to worry about the cost. He'll take care of everything. Overcome with gratitude, Shirley gives him a deep, respectful bow and thanks him from the heart. That night, Shirley stays at the mansion and wakes up the next morning fueled with resolve. She gets into her armor and makes her way downstairs. As she passes through the corridors, she overhears two maids whispering about who Noah might marry in the future. The chatter stops her for a second, but Zoe quickly cuts in and says it's way too early for that kind of talk. After all, Noah is only 6. But another maid named Renee rolls her eyes and tells Zoe not to be so innocent, since every other prince had already tied the knot by the age of 15, and Zoe doesn't react much, keeping her composure. Rena picks up on that and immediately jumps to conclusions, thinking Zoe must secretly be in love with Noah and probably wants to marry him herself. Especially since Zoe's been studying magic nonstop lately, Rena assumes it's all for him. Zoe flushes a little but quickly brushes it off, saying it's not about romance or marriage. She just wants to be useful to him because of everything he's done for her. With that, she hurries off, leaving Rena to stew in her own theories, and Shirley just silently watches wide-eyed as Zoe walks away. At the same time, the knight recruitment results are in, and Noah is handed the final report. The head knight praises his choices and thanks him for his insight, saying that thanks to him, only the finest candidates made it through. Noah feels quietly proud knowing the kingdom's in good hands. To celebrate the successful selection trials, he decides to host a small gathering the next day. He even asks his childhood friend Alice to perform that evening, wanting the celebration to be cheerful but meaningful too. While the celebration is in full swing, Byron steps in to pay his respects to Noah. Noah greets him with a smile and mentions that he actually arranged the event partly with Byron in mind. He points out that a lot of merchants connected to the royal family are here tonight, making it the perfect time for Byron to mingle and build some solid business ties. Byron nods, clearly seeing the thought and planning behind the gesture. The party rolls on with music, laughter, and a shared sense of accomplishment in the air. A little while later, Zoe approaches Noah and tells him he's just received a letter. The envelope stands out, there's no name, no sender, and the person who dropped it off vanished right after delivering it. Before Noah cracks it open, Shirley warns him to be careful because it might be something dangerous. Noah gently taps the letter with the Leviathan sword to test for any threats. The sword remains silent, which tells him it's safe. He unfolds it and finds a warning inside, one that hints at suspicious activity brewing among what's left of the Almeria rebels. No other info is given, but Noah starts connecting the dots. It doesn't take long for him to guess that the messenger must have gone undercover to dig into the rebel movement. He thinks back and remembers it's probably that soldier from before, the one who warned him about the rebellion not too long ago. So hears that and admits it makes sense. The guy did seem pretty loyal to Noah. But Noah shakes his head, saying this is serious because if that soldier's out there playing spy without the proper training, he's walking straight into a death trap. Noah decides to loop in his brother Henry and let him know what's happening, hoping he can pull the plug before it turns ugly. But by the next morning, it's already too late. News comes in that the soldier was found out and tortured. The only silver lining is that Henry's squad managed to rescue him just in time. Noah feels the weight of it hit him hard. He blames himself for not catching on sooner. The soldier took the pain and never gave up any intel, and Noah quietly thinks maybe he should just let it out because no secret is worth the life of someone that loyal. He tells Zoe to send word to Henry's squad, do whatever it takes to keep him alive. He's not ready to lose someone who'd risk that much for sake. The following morning, Noah heads out with Shirley to pick out a gift for Henry to thank him for putting down the rebellion. They swing by a local antique shop where the merchant lays out a variety of high-end items, but none of them really stand out to Noah. What grabs his attention is something hidden beneath a cloak. Curious, he asks the shopkeeper to uncover it. The merchant praises Noah's sharp instincts, then removes the cloth, revealing a stunning glass statue of a goddess. It's the work of a renowned artisan named Lindsay, and only 2 of them were ever made. Noah studies the piece for a moment, then calmly says he'll buy it and hands over 10,000 rein. But just as the deal's about to close, his brother Oscar walks in and freezes when he sees the statue. Turns out Oscar owns the other one and has been searching high and low for this second piece to complete his collection, but Noah's already claimed it. Without missing a beat, Noah steps toward the sculpture and smashes it. The room falls silent as the rare, priceless art crumbles into shards. Then Noah turns to the merchant and tells him the money will still be delivered. Oscar instantly figures out what just happened. With one destroyed, the remaining piece becomes a one-of-a-kind, making his statue that much more valuable. Oscar laughs, shaking his head, and admits the move was brilliant. Exactly the kind of wild thinking he's come to expect from Noah. Outside the shop, Noah notices Shirley looking thoughtful and asks what's on her mind. She admits the plan was genius, but she didn't expect him to wreck something so rare. Noah responds that the statue wasn't the real prize, it was just glass, but what truly matters are people, those who give everything they've got, who stay loyal even when it's hard, and that's the kind of treasure he values. Shirley's heart swells with pride. She now understands that Noah isn't just a leader, he's the kind of person legends talk about, and without hesitation, she swears to follow him for the rest of her life. Noah simply says he plans to keep collecting treasures like her. 6 years fly by, and Noah's grown tall and confident, and now 12 years old. As he gets ready to set out on another journey, the royal staff and maids gather to see him off, watching with admiration as their young master moves forward toward his next chapter. A few days after turning 12, Noah sits alone at the breakfast table while Zoe quietly serves him. His focus, though, drifts toward the new maid Gigi, who's standing by the window, completely distracted. He casually asks if something's bugging her. Gigi, still staring outside, says the line of people bringing his birthday presents hasn't slowed down even after 3 days. Noah gets why she looks so baffled, and Zoe chimes in, mentioning that last year the gifts kept coming for an entire week. Gigi's jaw nearly hits the floor hearing that, but Noah explains it's not just about taking gifts and moving on. Every single one has to be documented with the sender and content listed, definitely not something you finish in an afternoon. But thankfully he has Evelyn, one of his most reliable maids, handling it all, which lets him stay out of the mess. Once breakfast is done, Noah heads over to the Ministry of Military Affairs. The Emperor himself had tasked him with some work there. He arrives at the minister's office, occupied by none other than the 4th Prince Henry. The prince greets him alongside a knight, then cuts straight to business. An imperial order has landed on their desk. Their descended military force, led by Knight Captain Rice, crush a rebellion flaring up in the Empire's southern territory. The rebels, mostly barbaric forces, are overconfident and brutal, and the plan is to hit them hard with overwhelming force. Still, before executing the plan, Henry wants to hear Noah's thoughts. The plan sounds solid to Noah, and he turns his attention to Rice. The knight is Henry's direct subordinate and someone who's proven himself many times on the battlefield. Noah says he trusts Rice with the mission, but before giving the final nod, he asks him just one thing: how many troops he's actually taking with him. The moment the question lands, Rice starts sweating bullets and struggles to come up with an answer. That sets Henry off, and he immediately demands an explanation. Rice collapses to his knees, begging for forgiveness. Noah quickly steps in to cool things down and tells Henry not to blow it out of proportion and explains what's really going on. See, war funding from the imperial court depends on the number of soldiers a general claims to lead. Some generals pad the list with merchants, workers, or random helpers just to inflate the numbers and pocket the extra cash. Rice tries to apologize again, but Henry's still fuming at him for pulling that greedy stunt. Before things get out of hand, Noah steps in and tells him to relax. He explains to Rice that if he wants to recruit extra help for the army and skim a bit off the top for himself, technically he's allowed to do that. Hearing this, Henry suddenly realizes that padding their ranks with civilians could make the army look bigger than it actually is, enough to freak out the enemy. He actually gives Noah props for exposing the scam and still finding a way it could work to their advantage. But Noah shuts that idea down fast and reminds them that the Emperor demanded a flawless win this time, and pulling tricks like that isn't worth the risk. He turns to Rice and bluntly asks how many non-soldiers he slipped onto the list. Nervously, Rice admits to registering around 2,000 of them. Noah immediately orders him to recruit 2,000 actual fighters to balance it out with no excuses. Rice, looking cornered, just nods and accepts. Noah then scribbles a note addressed to the Ministry of Finance and hands it over. That letter would get Rice full funding as if all 2,000 were legit soldiers, and he's free to pocket every coin of it. The guy is stunned, not sure why he's being rewarded for pulling shady moves, but Noah, calm and cold, tells him that in exchange for the bonus he expects a flawless victory with no screw-ups. Henry is honestly impressed. He watches how Noah turns even dirty schemes into fuel for discipline and motivation. On their way back, he asks if Noah's ever stepped into an actual battlefield. Noah shakes his head and glances at his stats. They're still stuck at level 1. In the Empire, royal children rarely make it past their teens. Most don't die from illness, despite what the records say. They're taken out by rival nobles chasing more power. That's why young royals are treated like precious resources, never sent to the front unless the Emperor himself gives the order. Henry reminds him he's already 12 and should taste real combat. Noah just shrugs and says he'll charge into battle the moment the Emperor calls. Henry chuckles and says it won't be too hard for him, not when he's got a legendary magic sword in hand. Right then, Henry's carriage jerks to a stop as a girl darts out in front of it, screaming for someone or anyone to help her. A second later, a group of kids spills out from the shadows behind her, chased by a pack of scumbags ready to haul them off to Little St. James Island. They grab the girls and start dragging them away until Noah steps forward and calmly tells them to knock it off. The thugs, clueless about who they're messing with, sneer and tell Noah to go cry to his mommy and drink some milk like a good little boy. Noah couldn't care less about their lame-ass taunts. Instead, he coldly demands to see their registry number since smuggling slaves without a license is straight up illegal in the Empire. The moment they get questioned, they lash out, but Noah's done playing. He summons Leviathan and in a blink, slices through them with brutal precision, leaving them out cold but breathing. The crowd watches in stunned silence, clearly impressed even if they don't quite recognize him. Noah walks toward the shaken kids about to reassure them, when some crusty old bastard limps out from the darkness and greets him with a slimy smile. The geezer proudly admits he's the brains behind the whole trafficking mess and smugly warns Noah to back off, claiming he's got the protection of the first Prince Gilbert. That's when Noah realizes this slezzy fossil must be a major partner in this operation, someone bold enough to flaunt royal connections. Now he's stuck figuring out how to deal with this without making it worse. The old creep tells Noah to hand over the girls and pretend none of this ever happened, but Noah isn't having any of that bullshit. He turns to Henry and asks if he knows the guy. Henry immediately shoots it down, saying he's never seen his ugly mug in his life. Noah shrugs and says same here, but just as the old man opens his mouth to explain, Noah shuts him up with a burst of Leviathan's cursed energy, knocking him flat. Then he raises his voice and mocks the guy, saying even nobodies now pretend to work for the first prince. He tells the crowd that while simple folks might fall for this trick, he and his brother sure as hell won't. Someone in the crowd finally recognizes him as the wise prince, and just like that, the public buys every word. Noah orders the soldiers to drag the thugs to Gilbert's place and tell him they were tossing his name around like fools. After that, he decides to take the rescued kids back home where they'll be safe. Henry, still a little stunned, admits he's impressed by how Noah handled things. He explains that if those guys really were tied to Gilbert, killing them would create a mess. But standing by while kids got trafficked would have been even worse. So Noah spun it smart, called them fakes, and threw the whole mess back at Gilbert, who'll probably make sure they disappear. Later that evening, while Noah and Henry are having dinner, the butler steps in with urgent news. Henry glances up and asks what's going on, but Noah answers before the man can. A messenger from First Prince Gilbert had shown up delivering a statement about the thugs they caught. Gilbert apparently expressed his thanks for exposing the imposters using his name, claiming he planned to send them to court for a proper trial. But before that could happen, they supposedly drank poison and died. Of course, everyone knows that's a load of crap, and Gilbert clearly had them silenced. Noah turns to Henry and asks outright if Gilbert is really running a slave ring underground. Henry doesn't even hesitate. He nods and says Gilbert lives like a king, throwing money around like it grows on trees, so no way that lifestyle's funded legally, and Noah gets it. As the eldest prince born from a concubine, Gilbert has no shot at the throne, so there's nothing stopping him from turning shady. But Noah suspects the slave trade and hidden mansions are just the surface. Something darker is buried underneath. Henry stares at him, stunned that his 12-year-old brother saw through all of it so fast. The following day, Noah tells the rescued children he pulled a few strings, and they're free now, but none of them seems relieved. Turns out they don't have homes to go back to. Their own families were the ones who sold them off in the first place. Noah realizes if they return, they'll just be trafficked again, so he decides to keep them. He instructs the butler to prepare rooms for each of them and find roles they can fill in the mansion. And if anyone to study, he's to handle that too. One of the older girls steps forward, clearly shaken, and asks if Noah is planning to buy them. He calmly replies that he's not buying anyone. They're free to leave whenever they want. But if they stay under his roof, there better not be any betrayal. The butler steps in, telling the kids to thank Noah before guiding them out. And as they leave, Noah watches in silence. His philosophy flashes in his mind. People are treasures, and that thought pulls up a responsibility he's been putting off for a while. He then summons Evelyn to his office. She walks in and starts listing off updates about his birthday gifts, but Noah cuts her off because he already knows. Instead, he pushes an envelope across the desk. Curious, Evelyn picks it up, and that's when Noah tells her she's being dismissed from his service because he's appointing her as a government officer in charge of one of his regions. She freezes, unsure how to react to such a leap, going from maid to mayor. Noah tells her plainly that she's the smartest of all his staff, and keeping her as a maid is just wasting her potential. Evelyn's ready to turn it down, wanting to keep serving by his side, but he insists. If she does well, people will call him wise for recognizing talent. He orders her to leave the estate and serve the people, and that's all the push she needed. Not long after that, Noah is called in by the Emperor, who'd gotten wind of how he stood up for Gilbert's reputation. Noah plays it off, saying it was all just a fluke, and he only stepped in to save the kids and nab the culprits. But he quickly catches on that Gilbert must have gone straight to the Emperor himself, both to dodge any fallout and to come off squeaky clean in front of the higher-ups. The Emperor sighs, saying it's a shame that such scum still roam free. He asks Noah what the proper sentence would be, and Noah responds that by law, the ringleader loses his right arm, and the rest get shipped off to serve in the army, stationed on the front line. The Emperor nods, pointing out that Noah had tackled the criminals head-on and taken them in. But he adds that if it were him, he'd have gone undercover, taking a beating just to bust them red-handed. The Prime Minister cracks a joke, saying that count as treason against the imperial family, and they just end up executing the thugs. Everyone laughs except Noah, who decides to fact-check them. He calmly explains that if a criminal doesn't realize he's attacking royalty, it's just assault, not a crime against the crown. The room goes dead silent, so Noah starts thinking maybe he pushed it too far by correcting the Prime Minister over a what-if scenario. But before he can say anything else, the Emperor bursts out laughing and tells the Prime Minister that he won the bet. Now Noah's really thrown off, so the Emperor explains that he had wagered with the Prime Minister to see if Noah would speak up and correct them on legal matters. Noah barely gets a chance to process that before the Emperor casually appoints him as the new Minister of Justice. The court erupts with excitement, cheering Noah on, saying he's only the second prince after Henry gets such a title. Noah has no idea how to react, while the Emperor and Prime Minister exchange smug glances, clearly pleased with the outcome, leaving him even more puzzled. Later, he heads out to unwind and listen to Alan sing, but his mind keeps drifting back to everything that went down in court. He can't shake the feeling that there's more to the Emperor's move than just a promotion. Still, he figures there's no use overthinking it now and decides to just enjoy the music. Meanwhile, the Emperor receives a troubling report from the Prime Minister, but instead of jumping on it, he tells him to handle it because the matter he needs to deal with next is far more urgent. Afterward, Noah makes his way to the Ministry of Justice, where he is formally introduced to Viney, the Vice Minister. At a glance, Noah can tell the man is sharp and capable despite his young age, so he asks him to lay out a broad summary of his responsibilities within the ministry. Viney explains that the Ministry of Justice oversees and coordinates courthouses throughout the entire kingdom, while also presiding over numerous trials that take place in the capital itself. That means Noah will be expected to serve as a judge on a regular basis. Noah had already figured as much, but he follows up by asking whether Viney personally takes the bench from time to time. Viney replies that it depends on the circumstances, though he does handle a case or two when necessary. After hearing that, Noah calmly moves to his next question and asks Viney how many bribes he usually accepts. The question catches Viney off guard, leaving him momentarily unsure of how to respond. Noah reassures him that he is not being accused of anything and is not in danger. He simply wants an honest picture of how things currently operate inside the ministry, and whatever Viney admits will not be used against him. Understanding this, Viney confesses that he does take bribes, typically totaling a few hundred reen a year. However, he explains that he follows a personal guideline about which bribes he is willing to accept. Most other judges do not impose such limits on themselves, and as a result, they end up taking nearly 10 times as much as he does. Noah's interest is piqued, so he asks what this self-imposed rule entails. Viney clarifies that he refuses to accept bribes in murder cases, not because he objects on moral grounds, but because those situations are far too risky. If he were to release a murderer, and the accuser bears a grudge, he could become a target for revenge. So, to avoid drawing that kind of heat, he restricts himself to low-stakes matters. Noah nods in understanding, then pulls out a sheet of paper and writes Viney a check for 5,000 reen. He explains that if Viney averages around 500 reen in bribes each year, this sum should equal 10 years' worth, and from this point forward, he expects him to stop taking bribes entirely. Viney is stunned by Noah's clear logic and steady approach, and he finally understands why the king granted him the title of Wise Prince at such a young age. In that moment, Viney decides he wants to stand on Noah's side properly. He tells him he has no need for the additional money and promises to abandon bribes altogether. In return, all he asks is the chance to serve Noah with unwavering loyalty. Under normal circumstances, Noah would question such a sudden pledge, but when he checks his status screen and sees a noticeable boost triggered by Viney's oath, he realizes the man's words were genuine. Later that evening, Noah sits down for dinner with Oscar at his estate. Oscar notices the guarded look in Noah's eyes and quickly reassures him that the evening is nothing more than a celebration in honor of his appointment as Minister of Justice. After all, aside from Henry, Noah is only the second prince to ever hold a ministerial post. Noah thanks him for the hospitality, yet he cannot shake the uneasy feeling lingering in the back of his mind. In Henry's case, the position was a clear reward for crushing the rebellion. Noah, on the other hand, has not achieved anything monumental that would obviously justify such a promotion, which makes him suspect the Emperor may be setting a larger plan in motion. He turns toward Oscar and asks whether he remembers the story of the Empire's near downfall. According to history, the crisis stemmed from the old succession law stating that only the first prince could inherit the throne. On the surface, that seems straightforward, but in practice it bred complacency. The other princes, aware they would never shoulder the burden of ruling, spent their lives indulging themselves without restraint. Predictably, that neglect weakened the empire and nearly drove it to ruin. To prevent history from repeating itself, the rule was revised. From then on, each prince would be assigned a thief at birth, and the one who demonstrated the greatest merit and competence would ultimately be chosen as crown prince. The implication dawns on Oscar almost immediately. He rises from his seat and bluntly asks whether the Emperor is considering naming Noah the next crown prince. Noah admits he cannot say for certain, yet the possibility is hard to ignore. Moments later, one of Oscar's attendants rushes in with fresh news. The Emperor intends to appoint Oscar as head of the Ministry of Finance the following morning. That announcement effectively validates Noah's suspicion. The Emperor appears to be positioning potential successors, quietly preparing to replace Albert as crown prince. Elsewhere in the kingdom, the royal knights conduct a covert raid, dismantling a faction accused of conspiring against the Emperor. Later that night, the Emperor is briefed on the outcome. Under questioning, the conspirators revealed that their objective was to pressure the Emperor into abdicating so that Crown Prince Albert could ascend the throne. The scheme bears Albert's fingerprints, even if indirectly. After 3 decades as Crown Prince with no sign of his father stepping down, his impatience is understandable on a human level. Still, orchestrating an insurrection is a grave offense. Unfortunately, there is no concrete proof tying Albert directly to the plot, making formal punishment nearly impossible. The other participants, however, will not be spared. Their fate has already been sealed, and execution awaits them. The following morning, with Noah now presiding over the Ministry of Justice, the matter is placed directly in his hands and he is tasked with determining the appropriate sentence. The case itself is not complicated. Every individual involved was apprehended in the act of conspiring to depose the Emperor. While no solid proof directly ties Albert to the scheme, the connection is hard to ignore. The conspirators were all drawn from Albert's closest circle, making his ignorance highly unlikely. Viney asks Noah how he intends to proceed. Under imperial law, members of the royal family are rarely subjected to real consequences for their offenses. There is, however, one notable exception: insurrection, and in such cases, the penalty is death, regardless of status. Royal blood offers no protection. Even claiming a lack of direct participation does not guarantee safety. Simply knowing about a rebellion and failing to prevent it is grounds for execution. And considering how many of Albert's confidants were implicated, it would be nearly impossible for him to have remained unaware. If Noah chose to press the matter, he could formally accuse Albert of treason and demand his execution. Yet he understands that such a move would clash with the Emperor's true wishes. Publicly exposing a prince's attempt to seize the throne would ignite a massive scandal, so instead of enforcing the letter of the law, Noah opts to interpret it carefully. He later meets with the Emperor to present his proposed judgment. Noah explains that all those arrested at the scene will be executed without delay. The Emperor's silence regarding Albert makes his stance obvious. He has no desire to see his son punished. However, leaving Albert's associates alive poses a risk. If even one of them were to implicate him openly, containing the fallout would become nearly impossible. Swift executions eliminate that threat before it can surface. The Emperor is visibly impressed that Noah discerned his unspoken intentions so accurately. As a token of approval, he grants Noah an expanded budget and remarks that he expects great things from him moving forward. After concluding the meeting, Noah heads back to his residence. As he nears the front gates, he notices two of his guards sprawled across the ground, gravely injured. The scene immediately signals that something is wrong. He rushes to assess the situation, only to find that one guard has already succumbed to his wounds. The other, barely conscious, manages to warn him that the attackers responsible are still somewhere inside the estate. Noah rushes in without hesitation to take control of the chaos, and as he sprints down the corridors, he passes several of his soldiers sprawled across the floor, wounded and barely conscious. Before long, he spots one of the attackers in the middle of finishing off one of his men, so Noah lunges ahead and hacks at him, carving through his arms and legs all the way to the bone. The assailant tries to end his own life by biting off his tongue, but Noah shuts that down instantly by forcing a chunk of enchanted metal down his throat. Moments later, 3 more enemies emerge and charge him together, yet Noah cuts them down in under a heartbeat, leaving none of them standing. Not long after, Viney arrives in search of Noah and is visibly relieved to find him alive, though the atmosphere remained heavy and bleak. Even if every intruder has been dealt with, several of Noah's guards are critically injured. Noah is taken aback when he hears that all the attackers were killed, since they are usually captured for interrogation. That alone tells him someone is desperate to erase any trace of involvement, which makes him suspect a connection to Albert. If Albert's name ever gets tied to this assault, the fallout would be catastrophic, so Noah quickly devises a plan to eliminate the prisoners he stopped from killing themselves. By imperial law, raising a hand against a royal warrants immediate execution, so Noah drives a blade into his own abdomen and orders Viney to report that the intruders inflicted the wound, ensuring they are put to death before they can expose Albert. A short while later, as Noah's injury is being treated, Viney informs him that the executions were carried out exactly as commanded. Noah exhales in relief, knowing that if word of Albert's attempted assassination ever surfaced, it would permanently tarnish the royal family's honor. Afterward, Noah is summoned to stand before the Emperor and recount the incident. The Emperor makes it clear that there is no chance a handful of ordinary infiltrators could have truly wounded Noah, so he understands that Noah must have harmed himself to justify their execution. He recognizes the motive and even feels a measure of pride that Noah was willing to injure himself to shield the family's reputation. He invites Noah to walk with him, and once they step into the palace garden, he remarks that rulers of great stature often see their legacy stained in their later years. By that, he means that if he were ever dethroned, whoever seized power would surely spread rumors that he had become senile with age and no longer fit to govern the empire. They are both fully aware that the usurper being hinted at is Albert, and it is obvious the Emperor's trust in him has thinned to almost nothing. The only reason Albert has not already been disciplined is because publicly condemning the Crown Prince would leave an ugly mark on the Emperor's own legacy. Noah calmly proposes a way to handle the situation. He reminds the Emperor that Henry, Oscar, and Noah himself were recently appointed as minister princes to keep state affairs running smoothly, and suggests establishing an entirely new rank above them, a prime minister prince who would supervise all 3. Then without hesitation, he recommends Albert for the role. The Emperor rejects the suggestion the moment he hears it, refusing outright to place that much authority in Albert's hands. He turns as if to end the conversation, but Noah stops him and points out that it is not strange for Albert to be restless after waiting 3 decades for the throne. Granting him a title with visible authority, even if largely symbolic, might be enough to soothe that impatience. The Emperor sees the logic in Noah's reasoning, yet he worries that if Albert is given oversight of the minister princes, he could block critical matters from ever reaching the throne. That risk is real, but Noah has already prepared for it. He proposes adding a condition stating that if all 3 minister princes unanimously agree that an issue is urgent, they may bypass Albert entirely and report directly to the Emperor. The Emperor finds this arrangement appealing, as it effectively strips Albert of meaningful control while still giving him the illusion of influence, which should curb any reckless retaliation. Deeply appreciative of Noah's foresight, the Emperor insists on rewarding him properly. Coin alone would not suffice, so he invites Noah to accompany him to the Imperial Vault. Inside, the Emperor grants Noah permission to select any treasure he desires. With Leviathan's guidance, Noah surveys the collection carefully before choosing an unusual box that draws his attention. Yet the instant he lifts the lid, a surge of blazing fire bursts outward and engulfs him completely. Noah quickly figures out that the relic carries a will of its own, the same way Leviathan does, and once that clicks, he already knows how to handle it. He calls on Leviathan and drives straight through the blazing aura in a single strike, forcing the relic to submit. And the moment he claims authority over it, the fire swirling around him dies down, leaving a ring resting in his palm. Now that Luthier belongs to Noah, his fire magic parameters jump noticeably. The Emperor is stunned by how effortlessly he subdued it. though deep down he knows he should not be surprised when it comes to Noah. He offers to set up a few targets if Noah wants to try it out, but Noah declines, saying he has a better idea in mind. He leads the Emperor into an open stretch of forest, and when everything is set, he triggers Luthier, but instead of firing at a distant mark, Noah directs the flames straight at himself. The Emperor panics for a brief moment, yet Noah calmly reassures him there is nothing to worry about, explaining he only wants to measure Luthier's power against Leviathan. Just as he predicted, Leviathan edges it out slightly, allowing him to restrain the fire without trouble. On top of that, he limits the artifact's effective range to guarantee the Emperor remains unharmed. Gaining that level of command over an artifact he obtained mere minutes earlier borders on absurd, but by now the Emperor has learned to expect the impossible from Noah. He officially grants Luthier to him and asks that he wield it for the good of the Empire. Not long after, Noah stands before the Emperor again, this time in his capacity as Minister of Justice, tasked with ruling on a delicate internal matter. The Emperor's brother Graham has a nephew who is frankly a spoiled little brat, and while he has always governed his territory with a heavy hand, this time he crossed a line by murdering an innocent citizen without justification, which constitutes a grave offense. Graham has stepped forward to shoulder the blame and even proposed paying a massive penalty. But Noah informs the Emperor that accepting such a payment would be unlawful, since Graham himself committed no wrongdoing. Under imperial law, just as a children cannot be punished for a parent's sins, a parent likewise cannot answer for the crimes committed by their children. The Emperor nods in agreement with Noah, certain that Graham understands the situation as well, but is most likely attempting to smooth things over by throwing money at the problem. The amount offered was 30,000 rein, roughly 250 times the average annual income, making it an undeniably massive sum. Still, Noah firmly states that by law they cannot accept a fine from someone who has committed no offense. Hearing that, the Emperor half-jokingly wonders whether they should amend the law to permit voluntary fine payments, especially since the imperial treasury could genuinely benefit from the extra funds. Noah sees the logic behind it, but he believes creating such a law would set a dangerous precedent, convincing people that any wrongdoing could simply be erased with enough money, which would make maintaining order far more difficult. He admits the treasury is in serious need of financial support, yet insists they must pursue a more honorable and respectable method to secure those funds. The Emperor concedes that Noah is absolutely right, and he is so impressed by his judgment that he immediately grants him the honorary position of Premier Advisor. Grateful for the recognition, Noah suddenly comes up with a clever solution to strengthen the Empire's finances. He proposes that the Emperor offer honorary titles to anyone willing to contribute 1,000 rein to the treasury. After all, receiving a title directly from the Emperor would be an irresistible opportunity for many, and when individuals accumulate more wealth than they can reasonably spend, they often begin chasing prestige instead, meaning there would likely be plenty of eager contributors. Finding the idea brilliant, the Emperor promptly instructs his Prime Minister to summon Oscar, the Minister of Finance, so the plan can be put into action without delay. Upon hearing this, Noah chooses to excuse himself for the day, not wanting to intrude upon Oscar's jurisdiction. However, as he steps outside, he notices a small crowd gathered around the hole he had created earlier. At that moment, a man named Shizu approaches him and explains that the onlookers are simply fascinated, unable to comprehend how the ground had melted in such a strange manner. Apparently, one curious individual even slipped and fell into it while trying to investigate, which Noah cannot help but find slightly amusing. He then hands Shizu a pouch of coins, instructing him to cover all medical expenses for the unfortunate person since the incident was ultimately his responsibility. Shizu gratefully thanks Noah, remarking that he remains as generous as ever. Right then, Noah spots that Shizu is holding something in his arms, so he asks what he's got there, and Shizu explains it's a box packed with rhino beetles. Obviously, the 16th prince likes watching them clash, so he had a few caught for his entertainment. Noah actually finds the whole idea of creatures battling each other kind of fascinating, so during the carriage ride back, he decides to experiment with Leviathan and Luthier. He asks if they'd be down to square off against one another, and both Leviathan and Luthier seem totally game, so they shrink into tiny forms and immediately start throwing hands. Noah watches closely as the two keep going at it without pause, but in the end, Leviathan still has a slight edge over Luthier, so he takes the win. One of Noah's maids happens to witness everything, and she's genuinely captivated since she's never seen anything remotely like that before. Then it hits her that staring at what Noah is doing without permission is rude, so she quickly apologizes for intruding. Noah tells her it's fine and even offers to let her watch more since Luthier looks eager for a rematch. Noah starts wondering if simply observing their fights might actually make him stronger, and when he checks his stats screen, his suspicion turns out to be right because his level has increased. After getting back home, he makes Leviathan and Luthier battle at least a dozen more times. Up to that point, Leviathan wins every single round, but with each fight, Luthier's skill sharpens little by little until he finally manages to overpower Leviathan. After that last showdown, not only does Noah's level rise again, but Luthier's rank also climbs slightly, which proves that Noah's artifacts can grow stronger by clashing with each other, and he earns experience from the whole process. Zoe is stunned because this basically means Noah could keep leveling up endlessly without even stepping onto a battlefield, but Noah tells her it's not that straightforward. The first level up only required one fight, but reaching the next level took 10 battles, so the experience needed probably scales higher every time. Right then, Henry shows up searching for Noah and informs him that he's about to head out on his first official mission. Apparently, a nearby monster nest has started causing trouble again. so Noah has been assigned to deal with it. To figure out how many soldiers Noah should bring along, Henry takes out a unique magic box. In situations like this, bringing too many or too few troops can backfire, so the box evaluates your abilities and calculates the ideal number of soldiers for the task. However, the moment Noah places his hand on it, the box spits out the number 1, meaning Noah alone is sufficient to wipe out the monster nest. Henry can't believe it, since this has never occurred before, it doesn't feel that surprising anymore. Later that afternoon, Noah is seated in his study flipping through a book when he's abruptly told that someone has arrived to see him, so he sets the book aside and allows the visitor to enter. The man is Rice, and he carries a message straight from the Emperor himself. By imperial protocol, anyone bearing the Emperor's words is regarded as his direct representative and must be shown the same respect. So Noah lowers himself to one knee before Rice as the message is delivered. Rice calmly announces that under the Emperor's command, Noah's mission has been delayed until further notice. Once he finishes relaying the order, Rice then kneels before Noah in return as a sign of respect. As a retainer of House Henry, he is bound by strict rules that require him to show proper courtesy whenever he stands before a prince, no matter which prince it may be. After the formalities are complete, Noah questions Rice about the reason behind the postponement, since he is more than confident he could have handled the task alone. But Rice explains that it is exactly because of Noah's exceptional ability that the Emperor chose to delay it. The Emperor intends to transform the mission into a grand spectacle, so the entire Empire can witness Noah's brilliance firsthand. Hearing that, Noah figures it will likely take quite some time before all the preparations are finalized. With nothing pressing to do in the meantime, Noah heads to the local artifact dealer to ask whether he has acquired any sentient relics. Unfortunately, the merchant admits he hasn't encountered anything of that sort. Though disappointed, Noah wasn't expecting it to be easy to find such a rare item, so he leaves the man with a pouch of coins and instructs him to stay alert for anything matching that description. He even promises a generous bonus if something worthwhile turns up. Just as Noah prepares to return home, a disturbance near the market entrance catches his attention. A man is aggressively pressuring a shopkeeper because the owner refused to sell him an item that had already been reserved by someone else. Dalem was infamous for pulling stunts like this, yet none of the merchants dared interfere because his position effectively placed him beyond consequences. Suddenly, Noah calls out sharply for him to stop, and the moment Dalem sees him, he immediately recognizes the 13th prince, though his expression shows little concern. Noah states plainly that what he just did qualifies as intimidation, which is a punishable offense. Dalem responds without hesitation, revealing that he serves under Prince Gilbert's household, so under imperial law, he cannot be prosecuted for anything short of murder or treason. In other words, even Noah lacks the authority to discipline him over something as trivial as threatening a few shopkeepers. Noah is fully aware that Dalem isn't lying, and under normal circumstances, it truly wouldn't be a damn thing Noah could do to discipline him. But then it clicks in his mind that rule about imperial household members having to show proper respect to every prince they encounter. And honestly, that alone is more than enough grounds for Noah to charge Dalem with blatant disrespect toward the royal family. So he immediately orders Shirley to seize him, and while she has him slammed face down against the dirt, Noah asks if anyone nearby has something suitable for punishment. And since the shop owners despise Dalem with a passion, one of them doesn't hesitate for a second before producing a whip. Not long after, Dalem is bound tightly to a wooden stake, and Shirley turns to Noah, asking how many lashes she intends to administer. Noah replies that if Gilbert ever discovered one of his subordinates abusing borrowed authority to terrorize civilians, he would unquestionably impose the death penalty. So that is precisely the sentence Dalem will receive. And after a brutally long and agonizing round of lashes, Dalem is officially declared dead. Noah feels no remorse whatsoever, yet he understands that he may have crossed a line since Dalem technically belonged to Gilbert's faction, so he decides to personally visit Gilbert's estate to offer an apology. And to make the gesture even more convincing, he instructs Shirley to place him in handcuffs. Once they arrive at Gilbert's residence, Noah recounts the entire incident in careful detail and apologizes for not consulting him beforehand before carrying out such a severe judgment. But Gilbert remains surprisingly relaxed about it all and assures Noah that he did nothing improper because Dalem was never someone of real value. If anything, he believes Noah spared him embarrassment by eliminating a man who would recklessly commit crimes under a prince's name. And with that, Gilbert officially absolves Noah of any wrongdoing. With everything settled, Noah and Shirley take their leave. Yet as they walk away, Shirley questions whether the self-imposed handcuffs were truly necessary, especially since Gilbert appeared so calm, but Noah quietly reveals that Gilbert had been seething the entire time. However, because Noah showed up immediately to apologize, Gilbert had no opportunity to unleash his anger and was left with no choice but to accept it. The following morning, Noah is at home when he is suddenly notified that a member of the imperial family has arrived requesting an audience. He consents to the meeting and is soon introduced to Don. Don explains that he has heard numerous stories about Noah's extraordinary abilities and expresses his desire to serve under him. Noah agrees to take him in, though he senses something slightly suspicious about Don's demeanor, so he orders Dallin to conduct a comprehensive investigation into his background. This was the end of episode 8. Subscribe to not miss the next episode.